Central Park 5, and Eric Garner. NYPD statements advise us to follow the law, follow orders, do not be a threat, and everything will go fine. After my assault at the hands of NYPD officer Michael Scheer, it is clear to me that the foundation of the police, Michael Scheer, a white police officer, again showed the world the inadequate training, the violent, racist culture of the NYPD when he attacked me while my hands were high up in the air. I was no threat, I was not being aggressive or hostile, but somehow I was still assaulted by the police. The officer who is supposed to be a part of the police force, sworn to protect and serve, bypassed several white protesters standing to my right, only to shove me in my chest, snatch off my COVID mask, and pepper sprayed me in the face, then bragged to his buddies about how he assaulted me. I strongly believe that Officer Scheer should be prosecuted and removed because he represents members of the police force who hide in uniform, terrorizing those they are sworn to protect. That is why I have continued to push for Officer Scheer to be prosecuted. I have cooperated with the Civilian Complaint Review Board in their investigation into my assault. I have begun the process of seeking justice civilly. Also, I have cooperated with Attorney General James' efforts to investigate the police response to the protests. I'm grateful to Attorney General James for filing this historic lawsuit and including my assault among the cases that are serving as a basis for their request for justice. I appreciate your commitment to upholding the law. I'm vexed by the excessive force and racial discrimination by Officer Scheer. But I am glad the world got to see New York's finest in action. His failures as a civil servant have impacted my work, mental health, personal relationships, family plans, along with my safety. However, we the people will not be silenced. This historic lawsuit against the NYPD by the Attorney General is an indictment to the largest police force in America for its culture of taking opportunities to target those who are sworn to protect. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, I'd like to introduce Luke Hanna. Mr. Hanna?
Hello. Thank you, Attorney General James. On June 3rd at Cadman Plaza in downtown Brooklyn, I was peacefully protesting the murder of George Floyd with hundreds of others peacefully protesting. After being thrown to the ground several times and witnessing violent acts against numerous protesters, I fled the area in compliance with the NYPD's instructions while walking in the pouring rain. I could hardly see on my glasses away from Cadman Plaza, surrounded by dozens of officers, and I was alone. I was struck from behind with a baton, and I touched my head, and my hands were covered in blood. More than just the pain, immediate physical pain of being beaten on the head was the lasting pain and anger of having my constitutional rights violated. I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm a New Yorker. I live in downtown Brooklyn, and I walk through that area on a regular basis. I just couldn't believe it. I'm one skinny guy at that time, surrounded by dozens of strong officers in body armor. There's no way I posed any threat. I think I was assaulted by an irresponsible officer because that officer was sure that he or she would get away with it. So my hope from this is that the individual officers that acted out of line on June 3rd and throughout the protest are held accountable, and then beyond that, fundamental change in the way that the NYPD recruits and trains its officers. Hope to someday live in a city where I'm actually, proud of the police and think that they will protect me and not assault me. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. And now we will hear from Rain Valentine.
Rain Valentine. Mr. Valentine? Thank you. Good morning. My name is Rain Valentine. I'm here today to share my experience with the NYPD this summer. I'm pursuing my own case represented by both Gideon Oliver and Alea Cohen. On the night of May 30th, I was walking to the subway after finishing my shift at the hospital I work at in Brooklyn, when I saw multiple NYPD officers throw a man to the ground and start beating him. There were around 6 officers attacking with one person, so I began to record it with my phone. While I was filming, an officer walked up to me while swinging a baton and yelled, "Get back, get back." I immediately started walking backwards in compliance and responded that I was moving back. The next thing I knew, that same officer charged at me. He pushed me to the ground and began attacking me for no apparent reason. Additional officers then joined him and continued to beat me. I told the officers I was simply trying to get home, to which one of the officers threateningly replied, "You picked the wrong time to do that." I was terrified. When the beating finally stopped, they left me on the ground with blood streaming down my face. I was in great pain. I knew I needed medical attention, so I went back to the hospital where I worked and had to get 7 staples to close the gash in my head. I worked tirelessly at a hospital to protect New Yorkers from COVID-19, risking my life and my safety to help people I live with. Yet when I walk out onto the street, simply trying to get home after a long, hard day, I was viciously attacked and beaten by the very people who are supposed to protect me and our communities. The scariest part is that I know I'm not the only one. Members of the NYPD attacked and injured so many people this summer and without any meaningful consequences. It is your right, and these officers must be held individually accountable, and it's time that the entire police force go through some radical change to make sure that no one else is a victim to this kind of police brutality. I want to thank Attorney General James for taking the action today, which
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Allow me to acknowledge the hardworking team who worked on this case. First, Bureau Chief Jessica Clark of the Civil Rights Bureau, as well as Assistant Attorney General Julian Martinez of the Civil Rights Bureau, Special Counsel Mo Fahani of the Executive Division, Assistant Attorney General Travis England of the Civil Rights Bureau, Chief Investigator Oliver Pufo, Assistant Attorney General Greg Morrill of the Public Integrity Bureau, Assistant Solicitor General Philip Levitz of the Division for Appeals and Opinion, Deputy Solicitor General Anisha Dasgupta of the Division for Appeals and Opinions, Chief Deputy Attorney General Megan Fox, and that's Jessica Clark, Chief Deputy Attorney General Jose Maldonado, Solicitor General Barbara Underwood, and all under the supervision of the First Deputy Attorney General Jennifer Levy. At this point in time, we will take some questions. Please open up the microphones.
Thank you, Attorney General James. We'll open the call to on-topic questions from the press. We will not be taking off-topic questions today. To ask a question, you can click the raise hand button to be added to the queue. Again, that's the raise hand button to ask a question. Only Attorney General James will be taking questions today. None of the other speakers at today's press conference will be answering questions at this time. We'll give it a few seconds for the queue to populate. Our first question is from Marsha Kramer from CBS.
Hello, Marsha.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Marsha. How are you?
How are you? I have 2 questions. The first is what you would say to Mayor de Blasio and Police Commissioner Dermot Shea about the performance of the NYPD during the protest. And my second question is, what do you want the federal monitor to do?
So first, I had an opportunity to meet with the mayor of the city of New York. I advised the mayor of the city of New York, as well as court counsel, that we were seeking to end NYPD's long-standing pattern of using excessive force and making false arrests, and that they needed to reform their practices as it relates to large-scale protest, and that this lawsuit seeks a wide range of relief in addition to a monitor. Let me also correct you. It is not a federal monitor. It is a monitor that will be appointed by the courts to focus on NYPD's response to large-scale protest, as I mentioned.
Our next question is from Luis Diaz from New York Magazine.
Hello, Ms. James. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mr. Diaz.
Hi. On December 22nd, the mayor stated the following: "We don't accept and allow kettling or encirclement. You will not see it in the future, and if any police commander utilizes those tactics in future, they will experience discipline and consequences." Ms. James, do you take the mayor at his word?
The issue today is this litigation that we are filing against the city of New York, the mayor of the city of New York, as well as the leadership of NYPD. As I indicated in my remarks, the use is unconstitutional, also known as containment, and that the use of excessive force by members of the NYPD is also unconstitutional. And it's clearly the policies and procedures in place and that officers are trained and are disciplined in response to large-scale protests. Years as we our complaint dating back to the protests, the anti-war protests, to the Republican convention, as well as to the Occupy Wall Street, and most recently the events of this past summer indicate that NYPD has not implemented any reforms as it relates to large-scale protest, and that is the purpose of this complaint. Let me also go on to add that I do know that DOI, as well as Corp Counsel, has issued reports, but we believe that it is necessary that a monitor be in place and that this be, that this be subject to a court order.
Our next question is from Brian Chiarnelli from the New York Law Journal.
Hello, Attorney General. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great, thank you so much. So obviously there have been some officers who have been charged for their conduct in the George Floyd-related protests this summer. If my understanding is correct, though, your office has not filed criminal charges against any NYPD officer for their role in the protests. Can you explain why your office hasn't filed any criminal charges? Thank you.
This is a civil investigation and a civil complaint. And again, our complaint is larger and broader than any one individual officer. It is, relates to systemic and broad relief that we are seeking on behalf of the residents of the city of New York.
Our next question is from Shayna Jacobs at the Washington Post.
Hi, Attorney General. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms.
Thank you. So when the NYPD does need to control a crowd due to violent acts or destructive acts from individuals who are within that crowd, what should they be doing in place of kettling or containment, as it's called?
So again, the complaint that we have filed relates to the use of excessive force. The complaint outlines over and speaks to the fact that 30 incidents involved the use of pepper spray, 50 incidents in which officers used baton, 75 incidents in which all protesters were punched or shoved. And so these types of actions and more, as well as the false arrest by individuals who are not subject to the curfew order that was issued by the mayor of the city of New York, really call for systemic changes, including but not limited to training and proper discipline. It's really critically important, again, that those be implemented by the leadership of NYPD.
Next question and final question is from Dean Meminger from New York One.
Can you hear me, Attorney General James?
Yes, Mr. Meminger. How are you, Dean?
Hi. Can you tell me what you have fought this kind of battle for a long time, long before you became the AG? What goes through your heart and mind when you hear the stories of the men that you had on today? One saying, he was beaten bloody and had to go to the hospital where he worked with COVID patients to get staples. Another man, the cop allegedly bragging that he ripped his shit off and sprayed him in the face. What goes through your mind as a Brooklyn resident and a New Yorker if this goes on?
So, Dean, if you watched the 3-day hearing that we held There were over 100 witnesses. And then we heard the testimony of the police commissioner, which is in stark contrast to all of the witnesses that we heard. We heard about their injuries. We heard about the assaults. We heard about the violation of law. We heard from medics. We heard from essential workers. We heard from individuals who were engaging in peaceful protest. It is my responsibility and my duty to uphold the First Amendment and the right for individuals to exercise their right to protest. And that's what this complaint is all about. It is about the rule of law and ensuring that individuals, no matter how powerful they may think, that no one is above the law. I thank all of you for attending, and that concludes the press conference. Thank you so much. Copies are available to the press as well.